Good evening. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. I have a problem with, and I have nerves telling people to like like my content because I will look at content, enjoy it, and I want to hit the like button. So I've got to, and so I have nerve. It takes nerves to tell people to like my my videos, and I'm not liking other videos. So I'm going to straighten that out. Now I want to get to this. Have you ever had people tell you that black people are not together, we're not organized, we don't do this, we don't do that? Well, I have. And I keep telling people that systemic racism and racism in general is what holds us back and gives the appearance that we are not united as a people. The reality of the situation, if our black banks, cities, and towns were not bombed in the 1920s by the United States government, we would be undoubtedly the richest ethnicity in the United States of America. So don't say we don't stick together, because we do stick together. All our organizations have been infiltrated. They have been infiltrated by other black people for money. For money. We can look at, we can take Oprah Winfrey, for instance. She is big time in breaking up the black family. We talk about we don't stick together, but look, let's be real here. Black families, black women were given welfare, and they were paid welfare to do what? To have babies and not to have a husband at home. And some black women were having babies to make money. That's the reality of the situation. And the government paid them not to have husbands at home, men at home. Also, these men were eventually accused, a lot went to jail for not paying child support. Also, Bill Clinton came up with the three strike laws. So if a black man was trying to get his life together, he could end up in jail for 20 years based on a misdemeanor. All these things have worked against us in the black community. We were given affirmative action, but the reality of the situation, we worked and fought for it, but the reality of the situation, other ethnicities benefited more from it than we did. So we have to realize the effects of systemic racism. We must recognize it. Even when it comes to housing, we can't get redlining. We can't get houses to this day in areas that we may want to live in. Discrimination. We may not be able to get loans that we qualify for to buy homes. You have to understand how this works. Then you have what's going on in Alabama. The Supreme Court told them that they cannot redistrict sections of Alabama to deprive or to weaken the black vote. And you know what they said? They're doing it anyway. They're defying the Supreme Court. They're not following the law, but they expect you and I to follow the law. In Ohio, it's about 30 years ago, the Ohio Supreme Court said that the way Ohio funds its schools is illegal, using property tax, and to find another way to do it. Well, guess what? They ignored the court order and did not do it. They did not follow the law. And see, black people, if you don't pay attention to what's going on, it's easy to say that black people don't stick together if you don't pay attention to what's going on and how we're being discriminated against. If you don't understand how we're being discriminated against, how can you address discrimination and racism if you don't see it? It's not about Rodney King and what happened to George Floyd. It's more than that. It's more than that. Systemic racism, you have to address it. Look at it, see it. When you see it, know what you're looking at and address it. Too many of you who say that black people don't stick together, you don't even stick up for yourself. The biggest embarrassment in the black community is people who go to black churches. People who go to black churches, especially those who go to those prosperity churches with the prosperity pastors. Yashua, Jesus, tells us in the Bible that a rich man has as much chance of getting into heaven as a camel passing through the eye of a needle. You know this, but yet you go to the church of a rich man. And if that rich man cannot get in, and if that rich man has no chance of getting into heaven as a camel has of going through the eye of a needle, you don't have a chance either. You don't have a chance either. You are a sheep in his flock. When he can't get in, you can't get in either. When he's told to turn around and go the other direction, follow him. Follow him. That's where you belong, and don't say you didn't know. Deuteronomy 28 tells us clearly that we are Hebrew Israelites. It tells us clearly that we are Hebrew Israelites. The curse was slavery. We have been enslaved all over the world. It's in the Bible. But you black Christians, you read it. Supposedly you study it, but you don't. Because I've heard these so-called pastors saying that, we're picking and choosing what you should believe in the Bible and what you should not believe in the Bible. Because I heard the members IUIC, Israelites United in Christ. I see them out on the streets. Sometimes they are across the street from churches. And I've heard pastors tell them that you don't have to pay that part of the Bible any attention. I heard them tell them that. And most of them, they don't even know the Bible as good, or shall I say as well, as these young men. They don't follow the Bible. Prosperity pastors, preachers, or whatever you want to call them, they definitely don't follow the Bible because they're rich. And if you and most of you who join, you were prosperous before you joined. You were prosperous before you joined. So why are you joining? that 10% would be better spent in helping the poor, or doing something with that money to fight systemic racism. But I want you to feel this, understand what I'm saying. You were prosperous before you went to that church. And if you don't pay and if you lose your job and you are not able to pay your tithes, you will be kicked out. Others have been kicked out for not paying their tithe. Did Yashua collect tithes? Did Yashua collect tithes? He gave to the poor. He did not give to the rich. Why are you going to these churches to show off? Do you think you can pay your way into heaven? If this rich pastor on his way to the pearly gates, he's going to be turned away. Don't stop following him then. You just keep on. When he turns and goes in another direction, you go in the other direction yourself, because you're not fooling anybody. You're not fooling anybody. And the simple fact of the matter is, if all African Americans actualize the fact that we are Hebrew Israelites, that we are God's chosen people, we will stop racism dead in its tracks. We will stop racism dead in its tracks. Why? Because we are finally thinking for ourselves and acknowledging the truth. Truth sets your soul free. Truth sets your soul free. Acknowledging the truth sets your soul free. Truth is knowledge. Knowledge uses the mind. Understand this. Knowledge uses the mind. Knowledge comes first. Knowledge fills the mind, and when it fills the mind, you're taking in knowledge as food. You're taking in knowledge as food, and that gives you the energy to do the right thing, to be spiritual. Being a black Christian is not a shortcut. It's not a shortcut to heaven. All you're doing with this black Christian thing is appeasing your white master. You are appeasing your white master. And understand one thing, and I think Oprah will understand this now. White Jesus giveth, and white Jesus taketh away. White Jesus giveth, and white Jesus taketh away. I might as well stop here, because you read the Bible. If I was to ask one of you black Christians if Jesus was black or white, you would say he was black. But then you would post on your Facebook page a white Jesus. You'll listen to a sermon by a white guy who will tell you Jesus is white. You will read Deuteronomy 28 and ignore the fact that you are a Hebrew Israelite. You know, when the Bible said that Yashua had red eyes, it was probably because of the stress and the withholding of his temper based on the ignorance that he sees in his people. And I can tell you right now, the ignorance is repulsive. It is repulsive to see a black person read Deuteronomy 28 and then say that he is a black Christian, knowing that the Romans created Christianity after they murdered Yashua, Jesus. They murdered him. Then they usurped his teachings, and they used his teaching to colonize, enslave, and brainwash the people they colonized and enslaved. They used the teachings of Jesus to gain trust so that they could build up a foundation from which to launch their attack to colonize, divide, and enslave. And you know this, but yet and still, you know, black people remind me of all the people in the world. Caucasians bombed Japan, and instead of hating Japan, they're told to hate Hebrew Israelites, and they do it. Mexicans had land taken from them, and the Caucasians would say, remember the Alamo, took their land, and they are the reason why Mexico's a poor country. But yet, and then but then they want to be Caucasians, and they hate black people. And then you have black people that hate themselves and want to be white. You brainwash. If you call yourself a black, if you're black, if you're a Hebrew Israelite, and you've read the Bible and you know you're a Hebrew Israelite, you're either a traitor, or you think there's safety in joining the bully. But I'm gonna tell you this: white supremacy means one thing. It means white. It means white. It does not mean Asian, Latino, African American, or whatever you want to call yourself. In fact, at one time, if you were an Italian, you weren't considered a white supremacist. If you were from if you were from Ireland, you weren't considered white. If you were Mexican, if you were Italian, you weren't considered white. If you were from Ireland, you weren't considered white. So I guess that's why Asians are doing the best they can to whiten their skin, and a lot of countries are trying to whiten up so they can pass. But the reality of the situation is you're not going to pass unless you're European. You're not going to pass. Forget it. But with this is really frustrating. But the thing I want to say is that if you're black, follow the Bible, please. I mean, I can't. I'm going to stop now because the most I'm going to do is be repetitive. You know what the situation is. You know the situation. Stop being divisive and putting your own people down because you got a job and maybe someone else didn't. Because it isn't black people that is hurting you. It is Caucasians. Because back in the 1920s, if they would have left us alone, we would be the richest minority in the United States of America, hands down, and nobody would be able to touch us. Hey, that's what happens when you're God's chosen people. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you around.